Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty fascinating? Something that might just completely change how you think about emotions.
I love it. Always game for that.
So, we all obviously have them, right? Fear, joy, anger, the whole emotional roller coaster. But what if I told you that some of these feelings,
Hmm.
maybe even a lot of them, are actually learned,
Oh, that's a good one.
not something we're just born with? Like they're programmed into us through our experiences.
It is a pretty wild idea when you stop and think about it, isn't it?
Totally.
Definitely goes against what a lot of people believe for, centuries.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we're going way back. Early 1900s.
Ooh, setting the stage.
Exactly. A time when psychology was super influenced by Freud and his whole thing about, unconscious drive.
Oh, yeah, all that stuff shaping our behavior.
The id, ego, superego, all that jazz.
Right, exactly. It's all predetermined.
But then, enter this guy, John B. Watson.
A new challenger appears.
Yeah. He's considered a pioneer of this thing called behaviorism.
Behaviorism, so how we act.
Basically, it emphasizes how much our environment shapes us.
Okay, so not just our inner thoughts and stuff.
Well, he argued those were less important.
Interesting.
And Watson, let me tell you, he was not shy about his opinions.
Oh, I bet. Strong personality.
Very. He famously said, get this, that he could take any healthy infant and, just through conditioning, train them to be any kind of person he wanted.
Whoa, hold up. Any infant, as in a baby.
A baby. He said it could be a doctor, a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
even, well, let's just say some not-so-great professions.
Oh, wow. So he's basically saying we're born blank slates, and our experience is totally right on that slate.
That was his whole point.
Yeah?
He truly believed that the things we're exposed to,
Yeah.
the associations we make, that all that stuff is what shapes our behavior, our personality.
Hold on, wait. Even our emotions.
Especially our emotions, he'd say.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How did he even try to prove something like that?
Well, his thinking was inspired by another pretty famous experiment.
Oh, this is going to be good.
This one involved dogs and their dinner time.
Wait, dogs and dinner. Are we talking about Pavlov?
Ding, ding, ding. We've got a winner.
Pavlov and his drooling pups. So, classical conditioning.
You got it. But now the question is, how do you take that, dogs drooling over food
Right.
and apply it to something as complex as human emotions?
That's a good question. Because, fear and joy are way more complicated than, oh, I see food.
Way more. But think about it this way. Imagine there's a song you just absolutely love.
Yeah.
Always puts you in a good mood.
Okay, I have a few of those for sure.
Right. But the song itself, it just sounds, right? Notes and rhythms.
I mean, yeah, when you break it down, I guess so.
But because you've heard it over and over again during, happy times.
Like at parties and stuff?
Exactly. Or maybe a great vacation. So now, your brain connects that song with those positive experiences.
Ah, I get it. So now, even if I'm just home cleaning, that song comes on and boom, good mood.
That's classical conditioning in action. You transferred those happy feelings onto something that was originally neutral.
Wow. So Pavlov's dogs salivating even without seeing food?
Exactly. And Watson figured this same idea could apply to more complex emotions, even fear.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
He designed an experiment to test it out, and it became very famous and also super controversial.
This is where little Albert comes in, right?
Little Albert himself,
Yeah.
a 9-month-old orphan.
Ah, a baby. Okay, so what did they do with him?
Well, first they had to choose him carefully. He had to be healthy, emotionally stable,
Okay, yeah, to make sure it was the experiment causing any changes.
Exactly. They needed a good baseline.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what did they, try to make him scared of something?
They did. But first they showed him all sorts of stuff. A white rat, a rabbit, masks, cotton wool.
And he wasn't afraid of any of it.
Not at all. Just curious, like any baby would be.
Okay, so those were their neutral objects, right? Like the song before we associate it with good times.
Spot on.
Yeah.
But they also needed something that would trigger fear, automatically.
Ooh, so something scary for a baby, but without any learning involved.
Right. They call this the unconditioned stimulus.
Okay, what was it? Don't tell me they, yelled at him or something?
No, nothing like that. They used a loud, sudden noise. Imagine someone striking a steel bar, right behind them.
Ooh, yeah, that would startle anyone. So that was their fear trigger.
It was. Guaranteed to make a baby cry.
For sure. So they've got the rat, the rabbit, all that, and this scary noise. How did they actually connect the two in Albert's little mind?
Well, when Albert turned 11 months old, they started showing him the white rat.
Okay.
But every time they did, boom, they made that loud clanging sound.
So they were trying to link the rat with the fear from the noise.
You got it. And they did this over and over in a bunch of different sessions.
So like training his brain to think rat equals scary noise.
Basically.
And it worked.
Oh, it worked.
Yeah.
And the results, they were dramatic.
How so? What happened?
So after just 7 times of pairing the rat and the noise.
7 times, that's it.
Yep, 7 pairings. Little Albert started showing real fear when they showed him just the rat, no noise needed.
Wow. So the rat itself became scary to him.
It did. He would cry, try to turn away, even try to crawl away.
That's a huge change. He went from curious to terrified just like that.
A complete 180.
What?
And, Watson wanted to see just how far this went. Would Albert only be scared of that specific rat?
That's a good question, because, there are lots of white rats out there.
Exactly. So they tested it. They brought in a rabbit.
A bunny.
Yep. A furry dog. A white fur coat. Even a Santa Claus mask.
Oh, hold on. A Santa mask. With the white beard.
The whole deal.
And he was scared of all of them.
Pretty much. It seems like his little brain couldn't really separate the specific rat they used from anything that looks similar.
So it's like his mind created this category. White and furry equals danger.
That's a good way to think about it. And that's how Watson thought classical conditioning worked with emotions.
Okay, but they didn't just leave little Albert terrified of fuzzy things forever, did they?
Well, that's where things get a little complicated.
Uh-oh.
Watson's plan was to do what's called an extinction phase.
Extinction, make the fear go extinct.
Exactly. The idea was they'd show Albert the rat over and over again, but without the scary noise.
So he'd learn the rat didn't actually mean something bad was going to happen.
Right. Break that association. But before they could do that, little Albert was adopted.
Oh, no. So they never got to undo the fear.
Nope. And that's one of the big ethical issues with the whole study. But, let's come back to that. First, let's talk about what Watson thought this all meant for how we understand emotions.
Okay, yeah, because he was really going up against those Freudian ideas, wasn't he?
He was. Big time. Remember Freud's whole thing about unconscious drives?
Like hideous desires and stuff?
Yep, those. Well, Watson said, nope, not buying it.
So how did little Albert, with his rat phobia, fit into this whole intellectual battle?
Well, let's take something as simple as thumb-sucking.
Thumb-sucking.
Seems basic, right? Freud saw it as this instinctive thing. Like, babies have this unconscious urge for pleasure, so they suck their thumbs.
Makes sense, I guess.
But Watson, he had a completely different interpretation.
Oh. I'm intrigued. What did he think was going on?
He said it wasn't about instinct at all, it was learned behavior. Imagine a baby's feeling anxious, right?
Okay.
They instinctively suck their thumb, and it kind of calms them down.
Sure, yeah, I can see that.
So over time, that action, thumb-sucking, becomes associated with relief from fear.
So they learn to do it when they're stressed.
Exactly. Not because of some deep hidden drive,
Right.
but because it helps them cope with negative feelings.
So it's like conditioned comfort.
You got it. Watson was saying, look, we can explain all this seemingly complex stuff with simple learning processes.
So not unconscious drives, but learned responses. That's a huge difference from Freud.
It was a huge shift in how people thought about psychology.
I bet. So little Albert and thumb-sucking, they're all part of the same idea. Our emotional responses are shaped by our experiences.
That was Watson's big argument.
Wow. Makes you think about where all your own feelings come from, doesn't it?
It really does. And we're just getting started. And it wasn't just, thumb-sucking and stuff. Watson thought this applied to way more than that.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
He thought, a lot of our anxieties, maybe even phobias, those could all be explained this way.
So someone's scared of spiders?
Right.
Is that because they had, a scary spider encounter as a kid?
Really?
Even if they don't remember it now?
That's exactly what he was saying. Those kind of seemingly irrational fears.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily from, some deep unconscious trauma, like Freud would said.
So instead, it's more like
Learned association.
learned associations, yeah. Their brain just linked spider with danger.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be a conscious memory.
That's kind of mind-blowing. It's like our experiences are literally writing a code in our brains.
That's a really good way to put it. And of course, modern research has shown that it's complicated.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's not just one or the other, nature versus nurture.
Right. There's got to be some mix going on.
For sure. But Watson's work was still super influential.
Makes sense. It got people thinking in a whole new way.
It did. And it really opened up this field of behavioral psychology, how we understand and treat all sorts of psychological stuff.
This makes me wonder, whatever happened to little Albert? Did anyone ever figure out what became of him?
Well, his real identity is still a mystery. People have tried to track him down.
Really?
Yeah. There are some theories, but nothing for sure.
That's kind of sad. We just left him with that rat phobia and no idea how it affected his life.
It is. And it brings up, the big ethical questions about this study. I mean, you could never do something like that today.
Oh, absolutely not. Like intentionally making a baby afraid of something? Not cool.
Nope. We've learned a lot since then, thankfully. We have much stricter guidelines now to protect people participating in experiments.
That's good to hear. But even with the ethical issues, Watson's study did change the game, right?
Oh, for sure. It really got the ball rolling for things like behavioral therapy.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. So that's actually used today.
All the time. For things like phobias, anxiety disorders.
So even though his methods weren't great, the stuff he discovered is actually helping people now.
Exactly. In fact, one of the most common treatments for phobias, it's called exposure therapy.
Okay.
That's basically built on the principles of classical conditioning that Watson showed us.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, think back to little Albert. Remember how they try to link the rat with fear?
Yeah.
Exposure therapy is kind of the opposite.
So you're like breaking that link.
You got it. The goal is to help someone unlearn that connection between, say, a spider.
Because spiders are classic phobia material.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a popular one. So with exposure therapy, you gradually expose someone to spiders, but in a safe way.
Okay, so not just throwing them in a room full of spiders right away.
No. You start slow. Maybe just pictures of spiders at first.
And then eventually, like, being in the same room as a spider, but knowing it's safe.
Exactly. The whole point is to teach their brain that spiders don't automatically equal danger.
So their fear response starts to, like, chill out.
It does. Over time, that anxiety goes down because they're making new, non-threatening associations.
Wow. So exposure therapy is basically like that extinction phase that Watson never got to do with little Albert.
You got it. Except, of course, this is done ethically with someone's full consent.
Right. Very important distinction. So it's amazing that even from this kind of messed up study, we actually got some tools to help people.
It is. And it just shows how research, even when it's controversial, can lead to some good things in the end.
This is really making me think, like, how much of what I feel, my emotional reactions, are they really me? Or are they just, like, echoes of stuff that happened to me?
That's a deep question, and I think everyone struggles with it a bit.
Right. Because if a baby can learn to be scared of a rat just from some clanging noises, imagine all the stuff we've all been through in our lives.
It's pretty incredible. It really highlights how adaptable our brains are. And it makes you wonder,
What's that?
do we actually have more control over our emotions than we think?
Control. So, like, we're not just stuck with whatever emotional baggage we have.
I think it's worth exploring that idea. If we can be conditioned to feel fear, can we also be conditioned to feel, more positive stuff?
Ooh, like more love, more joy.
Exactly. Can we use these same principles, but in healthy ways, to kind of create a more positive emotional world for ourselves?
Now, that's a question I want to dive into. It's almost like, we've been talking about this hidden code in our brains, this emotional code that's been running in the background all this time.
That's a really great way to think about it, yeah. And like any code, it can be, rewritten, updated. Optimized, exactly. It's not about erasing our past or anything.
Right.
It's more about understanding how it might still be affecting us today.
So you're not saying we should all become, like, emotionless robots, because feelings are a big part of what makes us human, right?
Exactly. Emotions are, like, essential. They're how we connect with everything, with each other.
Yeah.
It's more about being aware of how they work.
Yeah.
So we can work with them instead of feeling controlled by them,
Okay, that makes sense. So practical tips. What can we actually do to start, like, rewriting our emotional code in a good way?
Well, first, just notice. Pay attention to how you react to things, but don't judge yourself for it. Like when you feel a surge of anger or anxiety or even just pure joy, just take a second, pause, and ask yourself, what caused this?
Like, why am I suddenly feeling this way?
Exactly. And see if you can spot any patterns.
Yeah. Ooh, that's interesting. So, like, if I always get super nervous before public speaking, could that be because, like, way back in elementary school, I had a bad experience presenting?
It's definitely possible. Maybe you've unconsciously linked that old experience with all public speaking now.
Even though it's totally different now.
Yeah.
Wow. So once you, like, figure out those triggers, what do you do?
Start challenging them.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, is this fear actually helpful right now?
Yeah.
Is this based on, like, real danger, or is it just an echo of something that happened a long time ago?
It's like updating our mental software, replace those old fear responses with something better.
That's a great way to put it. And there are a lot of techniques that can help. Mindfulness exercises, cognitive reframing, even exposure therapy like we talked about.
Right, like with the spiders.
Exactly. Those can all be really effective.
So we can use those same principles of association, but instead of connecting neutral things with fear,
Yeah.
we can try to connect them with, like, calmness or confidence or even joy.
Exactly. It's pretty exciting when you think about it. Think about how certain smells or sounds, they can just instantly bring back a good memory.
Right. Total sense memory.
Right. And suddenly you feel happy. We can actually do that on purpose. Surround ourselves with things that make us feel good, practice gratitude, do things we enjoy.
It's like training our brains to be more positive.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we do it, the stronger those positive connections become.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Little Albert and this whole idea of learned emotions, what's the big takeaway you want to leave everyone with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that our emotions, they're not set in stone. We're not stuck with them.
Okay, I like that.
We have more power than we think to shape how we feel and how we react to the world.
That's a really powerful idea. Don't be afraid to, like, explore your own emotional code, figure out where it came from, and then see if you can rewrite it in a way that's better for you.
I love that. Couldn't said it better myself.
Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with me. It's been fascinating.
It's been my pleasure. Always love a good deep dive into the human mind.
And to all our listeners out there, keep diving deep, keep questioning, keep exploring, and yeah, maybe start paying attention to those emotions in a whole new way. You never know what you might discover.